Thank you, Kamya. I want to welcome everyone back to the second installment of our series where we're focusing on digital marketing for B2B software companies. In today's presentation, we're going to continue the discussion that we started in the last webinar around the customer journey, and that becomes the framework against which all these webinars are presented in. In the last webinar, we talked about some of the early stages of the customer life cycle, awareness, search, evaluate stage, and how demand generation activity will drive people into your organization from an inbound marketing perspective. And then as we move them through the ongoing digital dialogue we have with them, they finally will make it to a commit stage within the life cycle. For today's discussion, we will continue to look at that customer acquisition journey, but we're going to look at some of the additional phases of that journey. If we begin to break that down, last week we spoke about, or the week before we spoke about demand generation. Today we're going to talk about pre-sales engagement in sales facilitation and how we as marketers who are responsible for the website and the digital engagement with the customer really have a lot of influence on pre-sales engagement and the ability to actually close sales, actually helping the salespeople in that process. And we're going to look at some of the capabilities that are required for each of those, and particularly around pre-sales engagement, take a look at how people have been doing pre-sales work and how people are beginning to do pre-sales work and why the changes in the market are allowing us to move that direction. So let's continue our discussion by focusing on that first section, which is pre-sales engagement. So right now, marketers kind of lay claim to about 69% of the sales enablement activities. So from their perspective, marketers are already looking at themselves as enablers to the entire sales process. Whereas sales only sees marketers influence about 60%. So I think with the discussion that we have today, we see a growing opportunity for marketers to have influence over the sales process, especially as we get closer to where we're closing that business. All the things that the marketer can influence, the levers that they have, are quite significant. So let's talk about pre-sales engagement. What do we mean by that? Where does it start versus the demand generation activities that we had before? So, you know, when we do demand generation, it's fairly early. We really focus on a lot of the activities for inbound marketing, in getting people engaged and then nurturing them to the point where they really want to begin to speak to a salesperson, where they're willing to pick up the phone or click on that opportunity, a call to action that would lead them to a demonstration of the software, maybe download a copy if you have downloadable software, or maybe sign up for, you know, a 14 or 30-day trial if it's a SaaS solution. So in this case, we see pre-sales engagement as they're beginning to make that shift somewhere in that nurturing process where they begin to say, look, I think we've narrowed down the solutions that we want, and now we're going to start digging in and really investigating which of these X number of solutions are going to be the ones that we'll want to shortlist and eventually run with. So we look at that as kind of the product comparison stage, where people are starting to look at that pre-sales engagement and weigh one product against each other. Then as we move through that, we begin to understand they're going to decide on one of the options and eventually make a commitment. So it's moving from comparison to commitment. We're looking at all of this today as we talk about pre-sales engagement, and then later as we talk about sales enablement, we'll begin to talk about where we get them to make that decision. So folks that have grown up in the software industry, as many of us have, and I've come from a software background very early in my days, working for companies that sell vertical market software and then more horizontal software. And throughout my career, I've always known of this role of pre-sales. Early in the day, I was known as a technical marketing engineer, perhaps, or pre-sales engineer, or technical engineer. There's a lot of different titles that are out there for individuals that typically have gone out in the field with the salesperson to actually help close the business. And the reason for that is that sales traditionally, particularly at the enterprise space, and even down in smaller areas, more departmental software, there was a large component of sales that had to involve the IT organization. And as we discussed last week, we recognize that a lot of that is shifting with SaaS-based software and subscription-based software models. Less and less is IT necessarily directly involved, and they have more of a guidance role or some other role within the organization, kind of check the box and say, yep, we approve of that. Or in some cases, they're not involved at all because people within line of business or marketing or some other area of the organization have the budget and the authority to make that decision. Yet, this notion of pre-sales, whether IT is involved or not, is there. The question is to what degree, how big is it, and what parts of the traditional activities still hold true as we move forward. What we want to do is really the goal of this pre-sales engagement is help the buyer make an educated decision. We're not there to close the business, but we're really to lay out our cards, guide them down the road, and show them why our products are superior than the competitor's products, and have the mechanisms by which we can do that. So product demonstrations, sometimes we need to get hands-on and do proof of concepts. There's obviously sharing the correct product collateral, white papers, and so on, that eventually gets them to the point where they say, hey, I think you guys are good. We want to take a much closer look at you. Now it's between you and someone else. So many of us in the software industry understand that. And we also understand that IT, for a lot of the decisions, even SaaS-based software, particularly in larger organizations, is still involved. And here was a very interesting study done by IDC in which, what part of that pre-purchase decision-making still involves IT, and consumption of vendor content by the IT organization. It was very interesting that out of 100 points that were given for people to choose, a large percentage of that still went to the interaction with the vendor's technical team having a bearing on making a purchase decision. So when we think about the digital landscape and how we want to begin to provide more self-service for our prospects and customers, and how we want to reduce our cost of sale, and all the things that really digital provides for us, how do we accomplish some of this? The great thing is that there's a lot of ways out there now for us to think about these things from a purely digital perspective, and if not purely digital, at least complement some of the in-person meetings, on-phone interaction that occur between pre-sales, sales, and the customer or the prospect that we're speaking with. We think about the traditional enterprise sales process, in-person meeting, on-site demo, often a product bake-off, then you've got this proof of concept where you may, sales engineers in there, and we're actually building something. We come back a couple weeks later. They may have us respond to an RFP somewhere in there as well as to get very close to making a decision. Customer references typically come next. We may deliver some type of solution definition if they have existing products in the mix and they want to know how do you get to integrate with those products. Obviously, a sales engineer is going to come back with a high-level, logical architecture, all those good things that people want that become kind of the checklist items to say, yeah, this product's going to do what we want, and final technical review and sign-off. So that's a typical enterprise sales process from a pre-sales perspective. All the different activities that people go through from product comparison to product confirmation stage. Now, as we go forward and we think about what we do, what we could do from a digital perspective, we can accomplish a lot of the same things and provide them in more of a self-service manner through our website and through other mechanisms. So obviously people can download white papers. We can do online demos now very easily, just as I'm doing this through GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting, and that's becoming very commonplace. In terms of customer testimonials and references, often product videos early on in product bake-off and trial software. In that area, there's a lot of opportunity, particularly with SaaS software. But again, when you've got SaaS software and someone's working with it, they may have problems. So the ability to support them during that time becomes very important. And later in our webinar series, we're going to talk about support. But you can see here how that support interaction and the support experience becomes a very important part, and often decisions may hinge around how that support experience was executed. Then we look at comparables to the customer references. We have video testimonials. Again, the solution definition may need to be done, more of an hands-on engagement. And then a lot of white papers and videos, again, from a technical perspective. Now, with that said, we're probably not going to eliminate the sales engineer. And depending on your software, the level of technical integration it may require, there's a whole professional services component, which we haven't even talked about here, that may get involved. But there are things that we can begin to shift and move off the plate of the pre-sales team that I think marketing definitely has some influence over. We just had a discussion today about one of our customers at eDynamic about the level of control that marketing has, perhaps on a website, where one portion like support may be completely carved off and managed by support. And that experience may not reach the same level of that brand experience that marketing would like. And in that conversation, it became clear that for that particular customer, brand experience is very important and needs to cut across every experience that their own customers and prospects interact with. So again, perhaps marketing doesn't own the support portal per se, the information behind it, but it may want to consider owning that experience because it becomes part of that whole brand that the customers then work through. So if we think about the various things that we could do, one of the areas that we recommend from a pre-sales perspective is this notion of a resource center. When we use it at eDynamic, we've got our own resource center. You can go to our website. You'll find the first installment of this webinar series there, plus a variety of other things. And those are the areas where people can go to, they can search, they can find the materials they want. They first ask maybe product questions, questions about the company, any number of things. A great kind of best practice resource center experience is Marketo. I think the marketing automation companies do a bang-up job in providing a lot of information in a well-organized manner that's highly engaging. And here, you folks can go to this yourself, but again, being able to search, have faceted search there so people can filter their content, because often you may have thousands of documents that may be sitting there. Provide a call to action immediately. You know, if they're coming to the site anonymously and they're fairly early in their product evaluation cycle, maybe they haven't provided their email address to you yet. This is a great time for you to kind of pull them in and begin to engage them in a dialogue if you haven't yet. Other things, extend this whole experience into the social channels. Perhaps they spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Maybe they follow Twitter. Get them engaged where they're at. And we talked about that before in our previous webinar. You know, we need to think about where are people spending their time and how do we engage them where they want to spend their time. And then finally, instead of creating just a wall of text, I think Marketo did a great job creating a very engaging, kind of visually engaging environment for people to experience the content on the Resource Center. And finally, if you notice down at the very bottom, they do a great job pulling people in with some calls to action. They have their free trial down there. They've got a 4-minute video, which is a perfect link, and then contact us. So all within a very small piece of real estate here, they accomplish a lot in terms of perhaps a first engagement or ongoing engagement with their clients. So I think this becomes a big part of pre-sales, is making sure that your prospects and even your existing customers, if you're looking to upsell, cross-sell, or keep them, remember last time we talked about the future of software is no different than the future or than a telco. I mean, you're going to have churn, people switching costs become lower. So keeping people engaged, showing your ongoing value through future product development and through the information that you can provide here may keep them on board longer. So the other thing that we know few companies are doing, and the companies that are doing it, some are doing it very well, and others have perhaps a little older technologies and systems around customer community. And specifically here, when we use the word community, we're talking about a private community. We're not talking about your LinkedIn page. We're not talking about your Facebook page. We're talking about a community where people authenticate themselves, they provide their credentials, they've registered on your site, and this gives them access to your community. And perhaps you may even have a community that's divided between the customers, support. You may have expose various types of forums within your community based on the type of person that's coming to your community. The other part here is you may have partner communities for your channel partners, which you may not mix or match necessarily with your customers. They may have forums that are specific to them and may not be visible to your customers, whereas your customer forums may be visible to your partners since they engage directly with your customers. So there's a lot of things that private community can offer. And we've done a lot of work. We work with products like Telligent, which plug in with SharePoint and Sitecore, Extron, and a variety of other systems to provide a really well-integrated private community that becomes a natural extension of your website. So that when people log in, they're not logging into two sites. They log into your website, and they're automatically, based on who they are, either part of one part of your community or another. So if they're a partner or the customer, they'll see those things exposed. Then if you look at a community like Salesforce, there are a variety of companies out there that have them. Actually, some hardware companies do a better job at this than some software companies. I think that Salesforce has a great example here because they start the community with search. We're big believers in search. Back to the Resource Center, again, started with search. We find that people tend to want to, click on the search box and just type something in and hit return and see what they get back before they spend time going to the menu. No matter how rich those mega menus are, it's still easier just to type in what's off the top of your head and see what you get back. And this is where we like to apply faceted search, where people get an answer back to begin to narrow that down and get to what they want in the shortest period of time. The other thing here is you may want to expose this community, and you see that at the very bottom. Show people that you have a community, and maybe show some of the content in your community, like customer recommendations and discussions, to actually influence a sales cycle, but also get people to register to the community. There's a call to action at the bottom. Join the conversation. You know, again, as there was a call to action on the resource page, we have one here. And the other thing I do like, we've got people's faces up here again. So showing the visual aspect of it, showing real people that are engaged with your community, always brings and lends kind of a humanness to the entire experience. So again, communities provide a real great tool allowing kind of voice of the customer to communicate the value of your software, the value in the execution of your organization to others. And I think nothing sells software better than someone else telling you how great their experience was. So we look at communities. This was some research done by Forrester, and they did this across about 1,000 companies. You know, in terms of, they talked about each stage of the adoption cycle, which of the following sources of information influences your decision-making the most? So if you look across that, and you look at social demographics, blogs, online videos, Facebook, and so on, you can see at the very top, support and discussion forums providing some of the most influence in their decision-making. So it becomes really a well-known, powerful way to influence your customer's decision around the software they buy from you. So we talked about the resource center earlier, and now we're shifting to support center. You know, this could be one and the same, or it may actually be different because you may be speaking to different customers here. Here we're talking about perhaps the individual that's early in the pre-sale situation. They just got their 30-day trial of your software, whether that's a download or whether it's a SaaS-based, they logged in through their browser, they're using it, and something's not working. They thought it was going to be easy, but something's just not working, or they want to understand some advanced capabilities of your software. Where do they go? Well, the Resource Center may be more geared toward the business user and how to get things done from a business perspective, business value, ROI, things like that, to move the sales cycle along. Here, we can talk more about, you know, specific things you want to get to. Maybe it is product documentation. Maybe it's how-tos or kind of recipe books, if you will, of how to get certain things done within the software that may be more sophisticated than what's obvious in the software itself. Again, creating a way for people to access this information easily. And again, what do we start off with at the top? About a search box. We're talking about a completely different software company here, VMware. Again, this is what we propose as best practice, starting with search. We find, again, people want to start with that. They have something on the top of their mind. They want to get in there. The other interesting thing here, notice they don't explicitly show a phone number. They don't explicitly show click to chat, but a real person is a click away, click over there, and they have the options of email, phone, and other things. So we're not removing it, but we want them to be self-service as much as possible. So again, this becomes a very powerful story. If their experience around support is good, they're much more likely to say, look, software's great, we had some problems getting going, support team is excellent, I found what we wanted in minutes, they had some videos up there, showed me how to do it, downloaded a document, it walked me right through it, and then they had some online chat, someone guided me. It was a great experience. You know, just because a person doesn't get something done the first time, it's not going to keep them from buying software. If they never get the answer that they want, that might be a problem. And so creating a solid support center that speaks again to the customer and their needs is something that can drive that sales cycle forward. So if we're looking at things like support center, which of the following customer support service methods have you used in 12 months? Thinking of the experience you've acquired, how satisfied were you with the following? This is very, again, a Forrester study done. Very interesting to look at what created satisfaction, but how little it was used. Telephone, you can see 69%, 69% used. That's a default for most people. That's what they're comfortable with. But we all know the cost of support is going up, and you don't have quite the control over the telephone. Not everything necessarily always gets captured. Whereas if we can move them to a web-based support model more and more, we have analytics information, first of all. We can even personalize the experience if we know what product they've downloaded or what license they have. And as you see, we're getting very close there to the type of support satisfaction that people are looking for. And then looking at some other things, we talked about demos. Here's a company doing very well, New Relic. They provide software to monitor servers and other things. And they, again, make it so easy for people to download a trial, to get things going. First of all, they've got something that's free. Second of all, once you get going with them, you just continue on with the same account, even moving that into production, so you don't need to change anything. How easy is that? So I like the fact that they don't require a credit card. They make it so easy for you to get going. There's almost no friction there whatsoever. Hard to say no if you're interested in it. And again, a call to action up front, sign up, ongoing engagement there. And we see more and more of this. And again, whether that is software that can be downloaded, we know as you move into more sophisticated and complex software, it's not going to work for large ERP implementations, but there may be other things that we can do for that to show and demonstrate what that ERP software is like. And again, it may be your own instance that you log into that's been stood up and ready for you to go. But again, getting people into the door requires them to do a test drive. Finally, we want to talk about videos. We really believe in videos and the capability that video has in communicating a lot of information in short order. And it's not just about communicating the words that the person speaks, but now you actually get to meet the person. You guys don't see me here as I'm speaking to you, but there are other situations where we do have videos that may be short, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and we find them to be very impactful. And you yourself may know where you have evaluated products, you're going out to find new products for your marketing team. Having customer testimonials, having the product manager themselves discuss the product, whatever that may be, brings that to life for you. And particularly if the videos are short, you can quickly switch between videos that are targeted rather than having very long videos that are very general in nature. And here we can see Eloqua, now owned by Oracle. This is actually on their homepage at the very top. If you scroll down a bit, they've got a main video there. They also have a variety, basically a carousel of about 10 plus 3 to 5 minute videos that target very specific topics. So it's very nice to go through and just say, hey, that sounds interesting to me, and then click on that, spend a very short amount of time and get a lot of information that comes to you. The other thing, down below we've got IBM, and they are using it for customer testimonials. They have no less than about 20, 25 customer testimonials there. And again, really getting focused around one product and even then being able to organize that by industries. Again, talking about what we did last in the first installment of this webinar, being able to segment that and target it for different roles and different industries in your customer space. So what are some of the key takeaways here? Well, first of all, we can't avoid pre-sales. Now, even in the age of digital, we're going to do pre-sales one way or the other, particularly as we move up into more complex B2B sales, more sophisticated software. Last week, we know about that 60%, how people engage with an organization for the first 60% of an overall sales cycle before they even pick up the phone. Pre-sales is that opportunity to influence that latter part of that 60%. Digital pre-sales for us really means the ability to shorten the sales cycle, reduce the overall cost involved, and do it in cross-channel manner. We can reach them with social, we can reach them via email, we can reach them across their different devices via web. There really isn't anything that keeps us from reaching them where they are. And then finally, as we just talked about from a video perspective, content marketing and segmentation analysis and how you begin to speak to them are foundational for any of your pre-sales activities. So let's talk about sales facilitation. We're talking about sales here and closing business. So how is it that marketing can get involved? Well, one of the things is that 35% of customers find too much contact a selling activity that's destructive to the sales experience. That came from a McKinsey study. In other words, there are things that actually slow down the sales cycle. And part of it, particularly with people now having more freedom to make decisions on their own based on budgets they have, based on access to information, they may not want to spend as much time with a salesperson. We want to kind of facilitate that ability. So as people are moving from product comparison, product confirmation stage, and then finally moving to product sales stage, there's a lot of basic things. Finalizing pricing, signing contracts, all of those things. You're thinking, why is that important to me as a marketer? Well, first of all of those things are kind of classic closing activities late in the sales cycle. And what we want to do is kind of make that as frictionless as possible for people. And again, we believe that marketing has a huge influence and ownership of the digital experience. And we believe that a lot of the sales process can be kind of moved through that digital experience. So if we think about that, let's start with simple things, deal rooms. We do a lot of work with professional services companies in high tech, in law, and so on. And deal rooms are a very popular thing there. We've seen a few of them with some software companies as well. The nice thing about deal rooms, they provide a way for you to move typical paper-based documents around in a very seamless manner without using email. Everything is tracked and audited. And the great thing is a lot of this can be single sign-on as part of your website. So you take them from that initial call to action registration to where they're actually closing the deal. They're still using that same login to get into the deal room, to have your salespeople put their contracts in there, to put other confidential information in there, maybe professional services agreements and other things that are waiting for them to be reviewed and signed. And perhaps in some cases with larger multi-million-dollar engagements, there's going to be some back and forth, and terms are going to be discussed and changed over time. Deal rooms provide a very frictionless mechanism in the digital world of doing that. So something that kind of fits hand in glove with that is the notion of electronic signatures. Many of you probably use DocuSign and other vendors like that to either engage with vendors that you work with or provide it yourself. So one of the things that we like to see happen here is where we actually begin to look at vendors that work with each other. In other words, looking for vendors like a DocuSign that works with one of the deal room vendors, so that becomes a completely seamless and integrated solution. And there are, we're not going to point out which ones there are, there's a few of them out there that work very well together. And so imagine now that experience as people come to your website, they log in, they're now late in that sales cycle, they're about to close. Deal room is one of the options that comes up where they may have contracts waiting. It becomes a very seamless experience for them. Some of the other things, we don't want to leave out the SaaS vendors, and as people begin to move into SaaS and subscription-based services, there's a lot of great tools out there that actually handle that. You know, a lot of the questions that we get from people is like, we're moving into SaaS, how do we provide the experience, and how do we even manage that? We don't want to build that from scratch. So we actually partner with a variety of companies. One of them is Zuora, and they have a great solution that enables you to basically outsource all that subscription management to them and then fully integrate that experience within your website. So all the electronic invoicing, credit card charges, whatever that may be, can be fully managed by them, but then fully exposed within your website. I mean, again, a very seamless, frictionless experience. So there's a lot of great resources out there. People built some great tools for us to integrate with. So some quick takeaways around sales facilitation. One, creating that kind of convenient closing process. Why make that last part of the whole experience the most unpleasant part of your experience? We want to create something where the entire customer experience, from the first time they engaged with us all the way through to where they sign on the dotted line, becomes a representation of our brand as a company. There's a lot of off-the-shelf services, and we'd be glad to chat with you about that, that can be directly integrated in your website to create that kind of frictionless world that we like. And when we do look at vendors, let's make sure they are pre-integrated. We don't want to make it difficult on ourselves, so we like to choose an ecosystem of vendors that work together, and that provides a very holistic environment. So that's it for today, with the exception of the partner channel. We're going to have a quick discussion here. We know that most of the software organizations, particularly in B2B, in some manner or another have a partner channel, whether it's a VAR, maybe you have some other type of channel partners that sell your software. You know, clearly, you know, we're talking here, the middle group of 40 to 50% of partners generally want to succeed but don't know how. And many of these vendors do a poor job. The vendors, like the ISVs that are selling software, do a poor job of supporting them. So we want to spend just a few minutes here talking about the partners. We believe, and we've seen, that's an integral part of what we think of as a customer lifecycle. And we work with some customers where, our own clients, we should say, where they see the customer lifecycle as being bifurcated. You've got the end user customer lifecycle and the partner channel lifecycle, both being customers to the company, with very different life cycles. Obviously, for some organizations, particularly those that are growing overseas and are trying to increase their footprint, maybe somewhat mature within the domestic market, they're going to try to grow their partner channel. So partner acquisition becomes a big part of it. So all the things that we've talked about, from demand generation through perhaps signing up a partner, closing them, deal rooms, all of that still applies, and we can support them. But we want to take it a step further, and that's things like integrated partner portals. Providing experience for the partner that makes them feel special, that provides them with information, details that obviously you don't always want to show the customer. There may be price sheets in there and upcoming roadmap details about your products. There may be special events that you want to invite your partners to. All the things that help grow that channel. So we always look to a variety of companies that have done a great job on partner portals. Microsoft obviously is one of those companies that's best to breed. Their partner channel is almost second to none. And fundamentally grown their business on the back of their partners. So here's an example of, again, single sign-on. I think one thing that Microsoft does very well is you move across all of their capabilities. You've got one sign-on. If I'm a partner and I'm signed in as a partner under eDynamic, it gets me across a variety of different properties and then exposes the information to me based on who I am and what permissions I have to see that information. I think that's great. The other thing here is just that one-stop shopping for partners. So you can see at the top here they've got memberships, downloads, solutions, licensing, all the things that might be important to them. You might even have different types of partners in which you expose different information to based on their permissions and their credentials. So one thing that we firmly believe is that the partner portal not be a separate portal necessarily, but again, provide that single sign-on experience. That portal from a branding perspective should be owned by marketing. Marketing manage that experience, whereas the partner marketing people manage the content behind that. But because it is an extension of the overall company brand, we feel that really it should be managed by the marketing organization. So a couple key takeaways. Again, partner portals, an extension of your corporate brand. All the functionality supporting the customer lifecycle also applies to the partner portal for partner acquisition. And finally, communities, as we said before, they could speak specifically to the partner. Again, single sign-on, get into that community, but you might expose forums to that person that are only specific to partners. So they have a chance to chat about the concerns and the excitement they have about your product, whatever that may be, to drive the experience forward. So, folks, thank you very much for your time today. We're going to leave you here with some information about eDynamic. And here's some key contact details. Please do visit us on our website, and we do have our own resource center there that I would ask that you visit. So again, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to hand this over to Tanya again to see if there's any customer questions or folks on the line that may have questions, and we'll see if we can get those answered. Tanya?
Yes, Rolf, we do have the questions. The first question is, can you share some tips on increasing social engagement specific to software companies?
Tips on increasing social engagement. So I think social engagement is always a difficult one to really get your arms around, because you've got to ask the question, what are you looking to get out of the social engagement, and who are you targeting? Depending on what your software is and depending on the audiences purchasing the software, there might be multiple people in a more complex sales cycle that may be doing investigation and influencing the purchase of the software, the gatekeepers and so on. You may have different social mediums. So again, if you're really more in a consumer space, Facebook may be truly a platform that works for you. If you're speaking to B2B space, perhaps you're speaking to a younger crowd that is purchasing your software, or smaller businesses. Facebook, again, may be a better platform. But then as you move out, there's other social platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter that may be better suited for certain markets. So I think it really depends on the audience and I think there's some evaluation that's necessary. Part of it is making sure that you're delivering value through those channels, whether that is driving people back to thought leadership material that you've just released. You may want to tweet about that. People hopefully will sign up for receiving your tweets, and you're able to drive them back to your website. When they download that white paper, whatever that may be, hopefully they'll also spend some more time on your site and get engaged with other content, enabling you to, again, build the brand and that deeper level of engagement. You know, the same applies with almost anything else. It's really about driving people back to your website and providing value. And through value, we mean, you know, goodwill. They have goodwill towards your brand. It's like these guys really understand what they're doing. They help me understand my problems that I'm trying to solve better, you know. So people will want to spend time with you. You're adding value to their life. So that's what we always look at. How can we add value to the customer experience? Is there another question, Tanya?
Yes, there are actually a few more. The next one is, what kind of metrics should we look at to track website users based on their buyer journey?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So the question is, what kind of metrics should we look at to track website users on their buyer's journey?
Okay, that's a great question. The metrics to look at for website visitors and their buyer's journey. If we go back to the first installment of this webinar series, we talked about the buying life cycle. We talked specifically about demand generation and also understanding where people are in the buying life cycle. Now, one of the things that we do is that we definitely take a step back and begin to think about the buying life cycle from the perspective of salespeople and marketers, and really begin to talk about how do you know when your specific customer in your industry, for instance, is at this stage or the next in the buying life cycle. And it really takes time, particularly with salespeople, because they engage and they have engaged with them sometimes for many years, to understand where a person's head is at. And that often provides us a baseline understanding. You know, when they ask a question about X, it usually tells us they're thinking about this and they're at this point in the buying life cycle. Well, we use that same approach here. We kind of map out the buying life cycle. We begin to think about, you know, what people will be needing and wanting at each stage in terms of content assets. It goes back to the overall content strategy, which is built upon understanding the buying life cycle. It's built upon understanding of segmentation and mapping that to analytics. So if we know people are downloading or certain white papers, maybe they're clicking through on certain calls to action that we've clearly identified as being within this range of a stage of the buying life cycle versus another, we can begin to map those, whether using Google Analytics or built-in analytics in your CMS. We can map those to particular goals and activities that will tell us where they are in the buying life cycle. And based on that knowledge, we can begin to personalize kind of that next best activity, if you will, or next best step, if you will, in terms of calls to action and so on, when they come back to the website following a download or a click-through on that call to action.
Thank you, Rolf. There are a few more questions, but at this time we'll have to get back. We'll have to get back to those questions after the webinar. At this note, we'll have to end the webinar. I would like to thank everyone for attending our webinar. We hope you found it informative. The recording for today's webinar will be available on our website within the next 3 business days. We'll also be sharing the webcast URL with all the attendees via email. Please feel free to reach out to us at contact@edynamic.net for any questions you may have. Thank you once again.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.